All right, so here's a preview of what we're going to be doing. And we're going to be working on this for the next couple of weeks because what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to turn numbers into basic number objects and then how we can take those basic number objects and link them together with other basic number objects to make more complicated numbers. And we're going to learn how to do that very quickly. But the key thing here is that you're going to be learning basically a new language in terms of how to turn numbers into objects. And the good news is once you learn that language, you're going to be able to do it whenever you want. And the even better news is you're really only going to do it for a collection of numbers. Now, it's a big collection of numbers. It's 100 numbers because it's all the basically two-digit numbers that are available to you. But once we have those, then you're going to be able to connect two-digit numbers easily into make four-digit numbers and four-digit numbers into make eight-digit numbers. And that means that basically every number that you'll ever have to memorize, which might be a date, or it might be a statistic, or it might be population, or it might be atomic weight, or any of those things, you'll be able to have a very easy, at your fingertips, already memorized number object that you can use. Okay, so even though you're going to learn a language, one of these two languages here, that's going to enable you to, if anybody comes up with a number, you're going to be able to turn that into a memory object, and everybody gives you a memory object, you're going to be able to figure out what number that represents. What you're really doing here is creating a customized, personalized list of basic number objects that you're going to use over and over again for the rest of your life to be able to easily create numbers, interpret numbers, etc. And you're going to learn a really cool technique that's going to enable you to link your memory object for number 14, which in this case might be Teddy Roosevelt, with your memory object for number 15, which in this case might be Albert Einstein, using a pattern called the person, they call it person object action object linking. I like the subject verb object, but this is a technique that you're going to be able to link these two together, okay? And then link these two with these two and turn any number out there into anything. So you got to bear with me a little bit because this is complicated, but we are building on what we've already learned in terms of how memory objects work, how linking works, how storytelling works, etc. All right? So this is a little preview to the lesson that I have just recorded for you about how to create these memory objects. And your goal is to have 110 familiar, memorable memory objects for each of the numbers down here on your list. And you can either use your personal experience to come up with those numbers or those memory objects, or you can use the technique that I'm going to teach you to come up with those memory objects. But you're going to use these over and over again. And I'll just give you a cautionary / reminder. In order to use the technique, the subject verb object or person action object technique, it's better to use a person than it is to use an object like this, okay? It's better to use a person than it is to use something else. Sometimes I have shown you objects like this because I'm not sure if you're going to know the people that I have, and I also wanted to kind of show you the technique. But start off with trying to find people, or, they don't have to be people. Obviously, Simba's not a person, but people or living things that have actions associated with them, because living things that have actions associated with them work for our person action object approach. All right? All of that said, this is a little preview. This is going to help you memorize numbers super easily for the rest of your life. So you have to put in a little bit of time to decipher the system and to create your objects. But once you do, you'll be able to use them over and over again. All right? Happy hunting. Okay, so we are moving forward with a very important and should be pretty fun concept, which is how to take numbers and turn them into memory objects. And so the goal here is sort of twofold. One is we want to learn some basic principles that can enable us to take a number and turn it into a memory object. And then secondly, we want to have some basic number objects that we sort of lock in, right, that we use all the time so that we can take them and make them like building blocks to create larger numbers. Now, first off, let's think about how we've created memory objects in the past. When we wanted to create a memory object for Churchill, remember we thought, okay, well, that sounds like a church on a hill. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is if you already have in your head an object for something, like we already had in our head an object for pie. You know, we thought, okay, well, that's pie, the food, or something like that. And so we had that technique so that we could get an object like Churchill or Stalin or Hirohito and quickly turn it into our heads. Now, we also thought about coming up with some ones that we might use over and over again, like, for instance, if we want to do multiplying or dividing or adding, then because we know that in math we're going to have those, we're going to need to use those concepts and remember those concepts over and over again, we want to sort of lock in an object that we don't have to think about, we just know we're going to use it. So that's what we want to do here, because if you can think about this, every number can be created once we have those basic numbers 0 through 9, then we can create every other number, right? We can create 11 by taking 2 ones, and we can create 18 by creating 1 and 8. So what we also want to do is, so if all we did right now was we memorized our memory objects for 0 through 9, then we could use those memory objects, combine those memory objects like we did with our memory pegs. We could have bun for 1 and shoe for 2, and if we needed to remember the number 12, we could come up with a memory object that linked a bun with a shoe, right? All right. What we're going to do is take it a step further, and we're going to memorize 110 objects. Now, this is a challenge, but it's one that will pay off for the rest of your life, because what will happen is if you have, for instance, a memory object for 19 and a memory object for 17, then when you need to remember that the United States entered the war in 1917, you'll already have part of the memory object. You'll combine 19 and 17 together, and you'll have a very easy to use memory object. And I'm going to teach you a technique which is going to enable you to do this very easily. But you kind of have to accept the value of having these building blocks, these basic number objects memorized. Now, the good thing about it is that it's super fun, because what you're going to do, like we've already practiced, some of these objects you're going to choose based on numbers you already know. Especially if you're into sports, you're going to say, for instance, you know, number 10 is Robert Griffin III, RG3, or number 18 is Peyton Manning, or number 3 is Derek Jeter, or something like that, if you're a sports fan. But as we've already discussed, there's other ways to do it, like rhyming, right? Remember, what's 1? Bun. What's 2? Shoe. What's 3? Tree. What's 4? Door, right? But what we're going to do is use a more sophisticated method of doing that, and there's 2 ways to turn numbers into images. I'm going to teach you the one that I learned first, and then we'll follow up with the other technique, which is something that a memory master has created and shared. And you can use, the key thing to remember here is the end game. The end game is that you want to have 110 basic number objects in your head that you can use at any time. So when somebody needs for you to remember a number, you can put these together very quickly. So it doesn't matter to me if you mix and match. Let's say that you really like the shoe for the number 2. Great. You keep that one. But you might say that number 10 is this famous football player, and you keep that one. But number, like we said, 71 is your birthday year, so you keep that as a baby or whatever. I'm going to show you how it doesn't matter. Your goal is to have 110 different number objects that when you think of the number, that number object is right there for you. When you think of the number object, the number is right there for you. Okay. So again, you want to go back and forth based on these. Let me start this over again. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how these numbers work, and then I'm going to challenge you to create your own number objects for each one. And the way to start is what I've already assigned to you, right? If you have numbers that you like and you want to start with those, just go in and fill those in so that you have a few blocks. You know, you might go in and fill some football players or baseball players or basketball players that you know, or any other numbers that mean anything to you. Go in there and fill those in, and then you can go through the rest of the numbers and use the technique that I'm about to show you for how you can create these basic number objects. And then we'll talk about how you can link the basic number objects together for you to be able to expand and be able to make 4-digit numbers or 6-digit numbers or 8-digit numbers. And the good thing about that is 4-digit numbers are obviously great for dates, right? If you want to remember that the Battle of Hastings was in 1066, then you put together 10 and 66. If you want to remember that World War II ended in 1945, then you put together 19 and 45. And we're going to link those using a specific technique. And then if you want to remember other numbers, like let's say you want to remember pi to the 20th digit, well, then, you know, that's going to be a 20-digit number. And what's good about that is that you can combine a 20-digit number, right, is 10 2-digit numbers or 5 4-digit numbers. But I'm going to show you how to do that easily. And then the other thing that you might want to memorize in terms of numbers are populations, are statistics, etc. And all that stuff can be broken down probably into a max of 8 digits, right? What is 8 digits? 7 digits is a million. So then what? 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 digits would be a billion. 11 digits would be 2-digit billion. So, you know, if you have 11 digits, you probably can remember any number you want other than pi out to the 50th digit. So the key thing here is one, if you could magically go through and have memorable images for all of these digits, right? All of these 2-digit number combinations. These are 3-digit number combinations right now, but they're really going to be 2. This is actually going to be 01, 02, 03 as opposed to 101, but I'll explain that later. If you could magically do that, that would be great, okay? But most people can't. If you think of the number 20, you don't have necessarily an image, and that's why we use one of these techniques here on the side. We have 2 methods for turning numbers into images. One is called the major, and one is called the Dominic Method, and that's named after, I think his name's Dominic O'Brien. He's a memory champion. I learned the major method, and I'm going to introduce that first, and then I'll introduce the Dominic Method, because it's, you know, you can pick and choose which one you want to use.